It's an At the Office edition of the East Bank Sports Show, serving up the hottest sports takes from right here in Cleveland, Ohio. It's your hosts, Noah, John, and Erik.
Good evening, gentlemen. It's good to see you both. Welcome into The Office, the podcast where we talk all things sports. I'm your host, Erik. I'm joined by my co-hosts, John and Noah. And you can join us too. Join the conversation. Send us a comment on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or text the show at 216-250-1411. That's 216-250-1411. I apologize for my voice tonight. Obviously, it's not really here. But the Cavs got that W, so screaming at the TV, I guess, has paid off. How you guys doing tonight?
I'm good, man. I'm excited. I got to watch the Cavs go 13-0 before I get to hop on and talk to two of my best good buddies in the whole entire world. Really excited to talk about our topics, even though you finally snuck in a soccer topic for us. But we'll get to that in a minute.
We'll talk about that.
I'm doing good too, brother. It's good to be back with you guys. Cavs got a big W. Really excited. We got the band back together. It feels like it's been 2 of the 3 for a while now. So looking forward to getting into some hot topics with you guys. But I'm doing well, man.
Yeah, it was
Great.
a rough October for getting all of us together, and I'm glad we're all together. It's making me happy, man. Despite
I'm
Erik,
with you guys. That's why today this is my Michael Jordan flu game. Like I was not gonna miss. I'm gonna rally. I'm here. Let's do it. You guys ready?
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
All right, let's start with 30-second takes because I want to hear what you guys think about Ohio State. Indiana had a close win against Michigan this past weekend. So is that Indiana game that's coming up in 2 weeks, is it scaring you? What do you guys think? Let's get the timer up, John. I want you – actually, Noah, I'm going to have you go first on this one.
I'm not scared. I think the Ohio State Buckeyes. Sorry, I hit the timer and went, man. I think the Ohio State Buckeyes are going the rest of the way this season. I think they've done a good job of adjusting and making some of these adjustments that made me nervous early on. Yes, Will Howard still throws me off sometimes. Don't get me wrong. But this team is way too talented. There's too much NIL for them not to run the gauntlet. I'm talking regular season. I'm not claiming a natty right now.
All right, Let's get that timer up and see what John thinks.
I'll pick up where you left off. I might claim a natty right now. I think despite the loss to Oregon, the Bucs are the best team in college football right now. But no, I'm not scared. I mean, the Buckeyes play big games all the time. This is another big one for them. Indiana's played some solid football. I'm happy as a Big Ten fan that they're doing well. I'm excited to see their story. But you look at their body of work, I don't think they're to the point or a caliber of a team to say I would be scared. We got to pay them respect, but Buckeyes should handle them by 2 touchdowns.
Erik, I'll timer you and take the reins here for a second. You ready to go, man?
Let's do it.
Go.
My sentiments echo the 2 of yours as well. I'm not worried. Listen, it comes down to talent. And nobody in the Big Ten recruits and has talented players like the Ohio State University. They can't hang. I agree with John. I think it's a 2-touchdown win. I'm not worried about coaching. I'm not worried about players. Yes, Howard has looked a little shaky, but guys are getting open and they're scoring, and that's what I like to see. So I'm not worried at all. I'm confident that we'll pull off the win.
I pulled the timer early. I thought you were going to go over, but just because you were feeling bad, I kind of wanted to play nice today and let you have the extra second because, you don't got the pep in your voice like you normally do. So I was giving you some leeway there, man.
My man, because I was hovering on mute.
You were hovering to mute yourself.
No, for you guys.
Oh, whatever.
Go ahead, John.
No, I do think the Big Ten has kind of taken a half a step forward. Like when they announced the addition of the Oregons and Washington and USC and UCLA, I was like, okay, from a name perspective, this is great. From a talent perspective, we'll see. Washington's put together some good years, but I think across the Big Ten, I actually feel like they're better than the SEC this year, top to bottom. Like Ohio State, Oregon, probably Penn State, at a minimum, would give the best of the SEC a run for their money. And then you got the Indianas and stuff like that floating around. I was happy to see the playoff bracket with 5 or 6 Big Ten teams in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I like the competitiveness. It's been more fun to watch Big Ten football this year than it has in years past, which has always been one of my gripes with the college game. As much as I still love it at the end of the day, and I'm still going to sit down and watch the Buckeyes, I've definitely been into it more and into sitting down and watching games that are, outside of the Ohio State realm of things I care about, matchups that I could care about, that kind of thing, especially with the Big Ten compared to, just flipping the channel to see top 5 SEC game this week like it normally is.
I want to move on, but I do want to say one more thing. Just a reminder that James Franklin is a fraud. He will never win the big game at Penn State. I was so happy to see his press conference or lack thereof. I look forward to it every year, and I look forward to it next year as well.
You are such a hater of James Franklin. I think it's hilarious.
I am.
It's great. It's a trope on the show. It's a trope on the show. You've mentioned it a couple times at this point of
He's
just
awful.
loving to watch.
He's awful. His attitude is terrible. Not a fan.
You thinking he's terrible is Noah thinking Mike Tomlin's terrible. I get where it's coming from, but it's wrong.
Mike Tomlin's won a Super Bowl. What has James Franklin done?
Picked up a dead program and took him back to damn near undefeated status and competing with Ohio State, Michigan for Big Ten titles year in and year out.
And lost every single year. But
well, if we're going to go on Mike Tomlin and go off the chain for a second here, I mean, Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl with a team that was handed to him and then hasn't done anything and lost every single year. So
at least Mike Tomlin makes the playoffs consistently. We can't say that about James Franklin.
There's a difference there. 32 teams and X amount of spots anyway.
Four playoff spots in college until this year too. I mean, that's when you're playing Ohio State every year. That is a tough ask.
It is. Sure. He's still a fraud. All right, I want to move on, and I want to hear your thoughts. So, let me set this up a little bit because Noah, of course, mentioned that we're talking Premier League soccer. That's not quite right. What we're really talking is NFL. So, I was thinking the other day, as the trade deadline was quickly approaching and every Browns player pretty much was named as a potential trade, my thought was, why don't we loan players like they do in soccer? So hear me out. You're the hapless Browns. You know you're not making the playoffs. In some years, you're lucky to even scrape together one single win, but you have the option now to loan players, meaning as the trade deadline approaches, you say, hey, Detroit, you can have Myles Garrett for the rest of the season so long as you pay his salary this year and give us, say, a second-round draft pick next year. He then reverts back to us on his original contract and comes back at the end of the season, hence loaning the player. John, I want to hear from you first. Could it work? Will it work? Do you want to see it? Why or why not?
No, it wouldn't work. No, I don't think I want to see it. It wouldn't bother me if they did. I am going to backtrack for a second here. Down the road a bit because I want you, especially for people listening who don't know, partially myself included, to just give like a 30-second how does loaning players work for all the people who aren't Premier League fans. But I think the main reason it wouldn't work before we go to that is injuries. I think soccer, it works. Baseball, it could work. Basketball, maybe even so. But that's because these are sports where injuries are less frequent, right? Baseball's not a contact sport. Basketball, I know it's rough. I'm not trying to slam basketball players, but it's not football, right? Football and to a lesser extent hockey are violent games. And if you loan Myles Garrett to the Lions and then he goes up there 3 games in and has another, I pulled my XYZ, he's a huge dollar player. And I just think like seeing him in a Lions jersey get carted off the field with one of any number of injuries would prevent it. It's already hard enough to give these guys huge contracts knowing that they could, look at Nick Chubb. I mean, the best running back in the NFL blew out his knee in a freak play. And I just think that the risk is too high. I also think and this is why I wanted to explain a little bit more about Premier League, but who's going to give up a second-round pick to rent a player? I mean, I think it would be exceedingly rare, right? The Lions are a great example because it's a team thinking if we get 1 or 2 more pieces, we can legitimately win the Super Bowl. But most of the teams aren't going to be buyers. Most of them are going to be like sellers or leasers of the players. And And with the NFL salary cap rules, how the hell could you add Myles Garrett to the Lions roster and pay him and stay under the cap? I just think there's too many pieces in place with the structure of the NFL and the violence for it to work.
Let me jump in real quick, Noah, because I have answers to all these questions. First of all, I'm not really.
Your answers are wrong, by the way, just so you know. But continue.
All right. First of all, I'm not too concerned about the injury part of it because Myles Garrett would be playing meaningful football. Well, it's not meaningful in Cleveland, but football regardless. He's still going to be playing for Cleveland. The injury risk is still there. It seems like you're saying it's exacerbated because he's going to a different team. It's not at all. He has the same injury risk on that team that he does on our team. So I think that's a negligible argument because either he's going to get hurt there or he's going to get hurt here. I don't know that it really matters. In terms of salary cap, I'm not worried about that. We can convert it all into bonus. We could find ways around that. You can have a special exception if you want. You're absolutely right that it would be a handful of teams. And that's kind of the point. It's the teams that are vying for a championship that, if we could have loaned Amari Cooper to the Bills back when he was still under contract to kind of put them over the hump, or we could loan Chief to the Chiefs, pun intended, to have that one extra step for them in chasing that championship. I think it does everybody a world of good. We win, they win, the player wins. You get a guy like Myles Garrett now that maybe he wants to stay a Cleveland Brown for his career. Is he going to win a Super Bowl here? I hate to break it to you guys, but no, Myles Garrett is not going to win a Super Bowl in Cleveland. And now he has a legitimate shot of contending for a title while still remaining with his team. I think I covered all your points. Noah, I want to hear from you.
Yeah, so all of this goes out of the window for a couple reasons, right? And I think this is true in a lot of American sports, especially when you look at a city like Cleveland. So I have a counterpoint to some of the stuff you're saying. I'm going to give my initial take first. My initial take is I don't think it would go over well with the fan base, ownership, morale of the league, XYZ, because of how much loyalty there is to teams and players, with Myles Garrett being, and we're using him as an example a lot here, right? Because, they basically came out and said there was no circumstance where they trade him, but, loaning him to like a Lions team that needs him makes sense, right? Back to Myles. Myles owns, is a part owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers now. His roots are very rooted in the Cleveland area. There's just too much going on where something like that would ever happen, in my opinion. Then you start getting bigger picture, right? No one in their right mind, to me, I don't think, is giving up a second-round pick, a first-round pick, a day one or day two pick for a loaner player, especially when you see the kind of compensation you go out and get for a guy like Zadarius Smith, who you get to keep on contract for the following year. And we're talking about, what was it, a fifth and a sixth, or a sixth that turns into a fifth, or whatever random NFL logic there is. I just don't think it makes sense. I think they could add it as a rule. I think you might see it once in a blue moon, but I don't think you'll really see it ever happen. Mm-hmm. And, just overall, I don't think it's a good fit for the sports culture. And, I don't know a lot about Premier League, so I'm not trying to talk down. I'm talking to my own Cleveland fandom, how weird and just off-putting it would be to see, Myles Garrett's wearing Detroit's colors for the rest of the season because we loaned him for a 7th-round pick. They can keep their 7th-round pick. I'd rather just keep Myles Garrett here in Cleveland at that point. Who knows, what's his name? Brock Purdy doesn't come around every draft. Most 7th-round picks get cut. That's just me.
There's a couple of things you said too, Eric. Your counterpoints, you did hit all my points, but either I didn't articulate it well or maybe it was misinterpreted. You're right about 17 games, but the Browns aren't going to the playoffs, and you play a potential 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st game if you go to the Super Bowl. That is prolonged exposure to injury risk at the end of the season, because most of these teams that would be looking to be the lendee from somebody giving the players are going to be looking at Super Bowl runs. The other piece of it that I wanted to come back to, you said we could figure out a way around it with salary cap. Yeah, we could. My point wasn't that we can't figure out a way to beat the salary cap. You just changed the rule. My point is, what prevents the NFL from becoming a rapid fire Major League Baseball where if the Lions could lend Myles Garrett, you can just figure out the cap, then why not just get Joe Burrow as a backup quarterback and get, whoever else is available. Name your favorite all-pro at any position. Hey, we'll take Joe Thomas and Myles Garrett and Greg Newsome and Grant Delpit.
Okay, you can only have one per team.
If you have a shitty defense. What'd you say?
You only get one per team.
Okay, but you're still able to fill out your roster, say half of the league, so 16 teams are buying and 16 teams are selling. You're able to get 16 players from another roster that might be at a level that are better than a position player you have on your own roster. It'd be a fire sale. There'd be no loyalty and that kind of thing going around. That's been my biggest gripe with the NBA, and I've said it a couple times on this show before. I don't like how often these big name players move around regardless of market size. You see Dame go from Portland to Milwaukee. Paul George is on his 12th team. That's the kind of stuff I don't like in my sports. It's the same thing with the transfer portal to an extent, because I get why it's there and I understand why it should be a thing now. To me, it's just like it doesn't do the same effect to me of sports. Bringing in, say we're the Browns and we're bringing in, I don't know, Joe Burrow. You said Joe Burrow as an example. Cheering for Joe Burrow after, he's been a division rival or an AFC rival for 4 or 5 years. It just feels scummy to me.
So if he was a free agent, you can't cheer for Joe Burrow. That's a hot take.
That's not true, but it's I get what you're getting at, right? I'm not saying that. If it were to a point where we could go out and sign Joe Burrow and bring him in, yeah, no brainer. Obviously, we cheered for Joe Flacco last year, but on a loaner where he's really in Cincinnati still, but he's just coming over to Cleveland to give us that push or whatever, it just doesn't feel right to me.
Even if it means a Super Bowl?
It doesn't feel right to me.
Okay, so if you had the option, I'm just curious here. For sure, I'm saying you'll win a Super Bowl if you do this. You won't if you don't. You don't take it?
I mean, now we're just playing with hypotheticals. Yeah, I would probably take it in hindsight, but
okay.
Or with that hindsight or whatever. But it's like, I don't know. I'd just rather the rule not be a thing and we move forward. And, the teams that are, big markets and spenders and all of that don't get to just buy everybody's players for a season and go on a run. And we get to watch all our greats go win a Super Bowl. And we sit here in Cleveland, good for them, but whatever.
I'm not saying I disagree with you either. Let me make 2 final points here. The first is that it should be noted that the way financially the Premier League and how they handle players and player contracts is vastly different than American sports. They buy and sell players in soccer, meaning, if you're under contract, you could be sold to another team regardless of trades, etc. It's not really, there's no real trade system. It's more buying and selling. The second point that I wanted to make, I completely lost. So somebody talk about something else real quick.
I think the trade that you were talking about, so I don't want to seem like I'm too, taking the people completely and totally out of it. Buying and selling players and trading players is the exact same thing. You just trade them for cash instead of other players.
Sure.
It happens in North American sports too. It's rarer, but especially in baseball, you see deals all the time where it's like, Cleveland Indians get rid of CC Sabathia for 3 prospects, $2.5 million in cash, and a box of baseballs and some chewing gum.
No, that's fair. And I did remember my point, and it was about loyalty. I'm kind of, Noah touched on it with basketball. I'm kind of sick of hearing about loyalty. As much as I love Myles Garrett staying in Cleveland, being a Cleveland guy, Mitch, same thing. I'm not saying there's anything against that, but the expectation that players should be loyal is mind-blowing to me. The teams aren't, so why should players? I want to hear your take on that.
I think it goes both ways, to be completely fair. First of all, I think a team should be loyal to their players, kind of like what we did for Nick Chubb, if you read that Players Tribune article and seen all the inner workings. I think it goes both ways for sure. And I'm not even saying loyalty to a fault, almost like Damian Lillard was in Portland for a very long time, where they were like, a 6 seed, and they'd make a run into like maybe the conference finals and then lose in 4 or whatever. And he was wasting a lot of his career. That I don't mean at all. I mean the jumping around from every team every 2 years because you're chasing and you're in your 20s still or early 30s. You're not at that old that you're going to sit on the bench and be the old head in the locker room type of thing. Maybe that's a traditionalist value, an old school mindset I have as a sports fan. But, you know, like LeBron's an example of this. First time he left pissed me off as he did for most of Cleveland. When he left the second time, it was okay. He fulfilled his prophecy. He moved forward. He was going somewhere else to help further his career at that point. We were going on a downward trend, trading for everybody and their mother, Isaiah Thomas, Dwayne Wade, all Derrick Rose. Yeah. And just trying to scrape together. I totally get it at that point. There's checks and balances here.
Yep. Is that topic burn up? I think I was going to jump in like twice. You guys made my points. I don't need to reiterate it, but something interesting came up that's definitely an aside, but it's a sports topic, and I wanted to run it by you and ask you guys. So a little bit of a, 15-second Reader's Digest history lesson. Paul Brown coached the Browns. Team was named after him. He eventually got fired. There was bad blood, so he went to Cincinnati, started another football team that's known as the Cincinnati Bengals. He was so pissed at the Browns, he gave them the exact same uniforms as the Browns, changed the brown to black, yada, yada, yada. I heard because the blood between the two organizations was so bad that there had never been a trade between the Browns and the Bengals. Us talking about Joe Burrow coming to play for the Browns got me thinking about that. I think it was true for a long time, but do either of you know if that's still true? I still think the Browns and Bengals have never executed.
There was that trade that got submitted, and they turned the paperwork in late for
AJ McCarron.
Yes, I was going to say the Alabama backup band.
Okay, would that have been like the first one?
I think so, yeah, because there hasn't been a trade since then. So
yeah. I don't know. It's just interesting. It came back to mind, and I was like, "Holy shit!"
To play devil's advocate, though, you never trade in division for the NFL unless it's like some pick swaps and stuff like that, in the draft or whatever. You never trade in. You rarely see like a Browns and Ravens trade or a Browns and Steelers or Steelers, whatever combination you want to use.
But they're out there, right? Even if they're rare. Like the Browns have traded with the Steelers before. I don't think they've ever traded with the Bengals.
It's crazy. It's a fun one.
Yeah. How did Joe Hayden end up in Pittsburgh? Free agent?
Yeah, we cut him, and then he signed in free agency, yeah.
Gotcha.
All right. Do you guys have anything else to add before we cut to break?
No, I just think it's not a great idea, but it was an interesting thought process to go through at the same time. I actually enjoyed the topic thoroughly, so I know I'm shitting on you a little bit, but
I was going to say the same thing. I came in with like here comes Erik with this fucking Ted Lasso versus the NFL kind of take, and I actually thought it was a good topic too. So
I never said I wanted it. I'm just proposing the idea.
Should we do corner kicks in the NFL? All right. Next.
Maybe. All right. We're going to take a quick break, but stay tuned because we're talking fandom and those annoying away fans when we come back. We'll be right back. Welcome back to At the Office. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button on YouTube and check us out on Instagram and TikTok. Shout out to our partners, the Fanatical Elves and Fans First Sports. They have some great shows that you should check out as well. This topic Noah has brought up to us, and I do like it a lot. So let me set the scene because we've all been there, right? You're in Quicken Loans Arena, and I know it's called Rocket Mortgage, but bear with me. You're in Quicken Loans Arena, and you're playing the Warriors in a 7-game series for the NBA Finals. And what you have are a lot of Warriors fans. Or you're in the Jake, and you're playing the Cubs, and you have a lot of Cubs fans. It's annoying. It can be frustrating, but I'm curious what you guys think if other teams' fans bother you. Noah, I want to hear from you first. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, real quick, not to go off topic and then go back on topic, but I was going to jump in when you were giving the shout out to the subscribe and everything. It's a minor milestone in the journey we have here on the channel, but I did want to announce and say thank you to everybody. We hit 100 subscribers today. We've been doing this for a little bit over a year. So I just wanted to shout out everybody who has been following, listening regularly. I really appreciate it for the effort I put in. I think I can say the same for these guys and Matt on the other show as well. That being said, I want to get into this now. This topic came to me when I was sitting there and I was talking about when I was working at the Cleveland Cavaliers Golden State Warriors game, and the amount of people I saw in that arena wearing Golden State Warriors merch kind of baffled me, coming from the era of that historic rivalry. I think you guys can kind of agree it was weird to see. And, there was probably some traveling fans. There always is, for sure. But a lot of people where it's like, maybe the son's in a Cavs jersey and the dad's wearing a Golden State jersey, or the wife is wearing a Golden State jersey. And it's a weird hodgepodge. And it just got me thinking about, why is that so? And, we've talked about it at length. It has to do with family roots and that kind of thing. I was just kind of curious what your reactions to would be on this kind of thing, because it kind of irks me in a certain way, seeing that and seeing, not the buy-in of the local fans, I guess.
I'm so split on this topic because what I would have originally said is that it's a failure of parenting. You have parents, and I don't think that's actually true, but you have parents that are diehard Browns fans and their kids running around in a Patriots jersey. What I think it actually is I think it's a good thing in parenting. I think they're letting their kids choose who they want to follow and watch. And I think it's also it's a reality of our new world with social media. I say new, I mean, it's been here for a while, but with the availability of clips and TikTok and getting kids interested in sport, you're going to find that they're going to follow the biggest stars, whether that's Steph Curry, LeBron on the Lakers. That's just reality. When I look back to my own childhood, before you guys bring it up, I almost said an expletive. My dad was a huge Cleveland sports fan, Cleveland everything. And as disappointed as he was for a stretch, I was a huge Yankees fan. I was rooting against them, or for them, against the Dodgers as well.
Still are a huge Yankees fan, just not as huge as Guardians.
Yeah, they're like one B for you, buddy.
They're two. Guards
pull
are
that
one
Jeter
all the
jersey
way.
out of the closet, man.
Guards are one all the way. I actually got rid of all my Yankees gear.
Good.
Quite a while back. But my point is, for me, it was the history. Mickey Mantle's one of my favorite ball players to ever play. I've been to old and new Yankee Stadium up in the Bronx. There's just that. I loved the movie 61 Star. There was something there that was pulling me that I enjoyed. And don't get me wrong, I was a huge Indians fan too. I was at a lot of those massive games in the late 90s. I got to play on the field with Omar. I got to pitch in the bullpen with Charles Nagy. Shout out to my dad making a really fun day for me. I was a huge Indians fan too, but my fandom followed different people. I always liked Tom Brady. I've been a Tom Brady fan for a long time. When you're a Browns fan and you don't have much to watch, you kind of sometimes adopt a second team. I'm a little partial to the Seahawks sometimes because I have family out there. My point is, fandom's weird. It is insanely frustrating when you're at a game, especially a big game, and you hear more clapping or chants from the other team. And I think that only ever really happens when our teams are bad. The World Series maybe being... maybe you can extrapolate that because people were just selling tickets for insane dollars, which I don't blame them. But yes, there's an annoyance there, but I think it's just part of our life and culture now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this in my mind comes up into like 3, maybe 4 camps, right? 1, do other fans annoy me? No, they love their team like they love me. If you're a Steelers fan, you grew up in Pittsburgh and you're a diehard Steelers fan, that's how this whole thing works. If you travel from Pittsburgh to Cleveland and buy a ticket and you want to cheer for your team and you happen to have 20,000 people there, great. Kudos to you for traveling. The Buckeyes and Browns travel well too, so respect. I remember being in college, and when the Donovan McNabb, Terrell Owens, Eagles came to town, there were at least 20,000 Eagles fans there, and it sounded like we were in Philly because we were right next to their section. That's just respect for a fan base showing up and showing out. Now, the thing where it starts to get annoying for me, but I get it and I'll still give them a pass, is people who go, well, I'm not a Cavs fan, I'm a LeBron fan. So they cheered for him in Cleveland and then Miami and then Cleveland and then LA. And I don't get that, but to each his own. You have a right to root for whoever you want. When I think about the fans that irritate me, the only type of fans where I'm just like, you know what? No, this should not be allowed. This is bullshit. Is the I'm born and raised in Cleveland, but I'm a Steelers fan and a Michigan fan and a Yankees fan and a LA Kings fan. And it's like, you're just picking the best team in every sport, and you grew up here. Stop being a front runner and have some damn allegiance. Those are the ones that I don't get. Like, I'm also a Yankees fan, but I'm a Cowboys fan.
I was going to ask about the Lakers, Cowboys, Yankees,
Celtics,
Alabama, those fans that that we all know one. I can think of one off the top of my head right now, and it's like, why are we just picking, whoever is great? That kind of thing bothers me too. I'll never blame kids for, having fandom. There was a point in time where I loved the Seahawks. We've talked about that early on before, we really started doing this weekly. I get it. I get you kind of start following fandoms around, but I guess when I look back at my life, even when the Browns were 0-16 and stuff, and I was younger and I wasn't like 8 guys, just so you know, I was of normal thought processes and stuff for the most part. What was it? 2016 we went 0-16.
So you were 16.
Oh my God.
Regardless though, to me, it just doesn't make sense because I've always followed my teams, and my teams happen to be the Cleveland teams because I'm from Cleveland and my family loves Cleveland sports and Ohio State, much like you guys. I've just never got the, I'm going to stray away all the way over here and never leave and never go back. I get being fans of other things going on. Like Matt Stafford, I cheered for example, when they were in the Super Bowl and he finally got his one. But
there's 2 scenarios that we didn't consider that I think have validity. One is the Browns left. So there's a lot of people in Cleveland older than you, my age, who are like, well, I got to root for somebody. The Steelers were good then, and you were in your formative years.
No, you did not jump from Browns to Steelers. I'm not saying
it happened quite a bit.
That's awful.
It is awful, but it happened a ton, and with no football. The other thing is, it wasn't like DirecTV and all these things existed where you had NFL Sunday Ticket and Red Zone. You got a game at 1 on Fox and CBS. You got a game at 4 on one or the other. And because the Browns were here, it was always the Bengals or the Steelers.
Then I'd root against whoever was playing Pittsburgh. I'd be a fan of every single team that rolled through Pittsburgh.
I'm just saying it happened, and let's say it's not Pittsburgh. Let's say, I had a boss
Detroit.
A couple jobs ago who said, I was a cheerleader when I was a kid, and the team that I cheered for was called the Packers, and she's been a Packers fan since she was 6, but she's born and raised and lives in Cleveland. She loves the Browns too, but the Packers are her number 1 team. I don't give a shit if you're a Packers fan. It's just the Steelers and Ravens that I can't abide by. The other scenario that we didn't think about, what'd you say?
What about the Bengals?
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing we didn't think about is people who grew up in divided households. If you, like, the Browns are number 1, number 2 is so far away it should be number 13, even though it's number 2. But if you don't think that I saw my mom come over in her Bengals gear and was rooting for the Bengals in the Super Bowl against the Rams, you're nuts. It's my mom. It's my family. She's from Cincinnati, so it's part of my family. I mean, if the Cincinnati Reds are ever in the playoffs or the World Series playing anybody but the Guardians, you bet your ass I'm rooting for the Reds.
And now that Tito's coaching, I'm partial to that.
Especially if Tito's coaching. He did a good job here. I don't want to see them suck down there. I hope he wins the damn National League next year.
I hope they suck and have the worst record in baseball history. I just want to put that one out there real quick.
Spiteful.
You brought up an interesting scenario. You said you live in Cleveland, but you're Steelers fans and Michigan fans. I'd argue that it's worse to be a Steelers fan and an Ohio State fan because that drives me nuts.
You know what though? That's the natural. If you live in Youngstown, it would be totally natural to be a Buckeyes fan.
I get it, but I still don't like it.
So I'm with John, and I'm with you too, Eric. I hate that for sure, but I feel like that Youngstown, Niles area gets a little bit of a pass because of positioning of where they're at. Basically,
Yep.
I will concede.
Like I said,
sure.
I get it. I just don't like it. I have a good friend. It's my dad's friend. He graduated high school with my dad. He is a massive Steelers fan and a massive Buckeyes fan. And I don't question his loyalty to Ohio State at all, but he's so delusional when he talks about the Steelers, although this year he's going to take my $50, so I guess maybe not. But I try to keep him at arm's length when he talks about the Buckeyes because I don't believe a word he says because of the viewpoints coming from the Pittsburgh fan.
We've also been I get that point. Yeah, I think too we've also been the beneficiary of this over the time. Like for all the Browns up and downs, mostly downs in the last 20 years, still have one of the, if not the largest sports affiliated fan group in the world in the Browns backers. And one of the ways that came to fruition is, everybody grew up in Cleveland and left. We know that there's trillions of people in Phoenix and San Diego who are Browns fans, but when the Browns were the Browns, everybody from like Elvis Presley to Condoleezza Rice are Browns fans because it's like my dad marched with Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali during the civil rights. Like there's so many ties to the Browns that we actually are a beneficiary of that in a lot of ways because there are people all over the country who are Browns fans who've never even been to Cleveland.
Quick shout out to Tim. I apologize for your Seattle teams because, man, what a rough season to be a Mariners fan this year. That's tough.
That's another city, too. Like, I have a few friends who moved to Seattle, and she's a Mariners fan. Like, I can't, no matter how hard I try, there are some cities where the teams just don't tie because we're AFC, they're NFC, and we never play. Or it's the same with baseball. They're American League, we're National League. Like, who the hell cares if you're a St. Louis Cardinals fan or Seattle Seahawks fan? I couldn't give
right.
It's just
I agree with that. And there are those like I said, I'm partial to Seattle teams just because I have family out there and I've been to games. I've always been an Ichiro fan back in the day, so that Mariners tie. I've gone to games at the old Kingdom, so I've seen all of that. But yeah, like you said, who cares? That's like if you were a Arizona Cardinals fan, like that has no bearing on how I root at all.
You know what I kind of realized? I'm sitting here thinking and listening to your takes. I've realized that loyalty is very important to me in sports because, this topic irks me. The idea of, renting players off or loaning players or whatever term you want to use annoys me, all because of the lack of loyalty that's there. So if there's a stream of consciousness for Noah's takes today of what happened at the office, it is Noah hates it when people aren't loyal to their sports teams, damn it.
You know what, though? It's funny you say that because my personality off the show, outside of sports, I'm big on loyalty too. I'm a very loyal person. And so, like, if I have a friendship, for example, I expect that same loyalty because that's just how I operate. But I guess it's not quite there as strongly in sports. Listen, maybe that's not true because I'm a massive Ohio State fan. And if you're a Michigan fan, I will poke fun at you all day long. We had one come on vacation that was very aggressive about his fandom. But I don't know. If you want to be happy rooting for Steph Curry, that doesn't bother me. Go for it. I'm going to be happy rooting for my Cavs, the only undefeated basketball team left.
13-0, baby.
Yep.
I don't know. It just doesn't bother me as much.
No, I think the loyalty is interesting too because the United States is such a big place with so many different types of people. That depth of loyalty and identity with where you come from is more hardcore in the Midwest than in a lot of places. It's also pretty hardcore in the South. It's pretty hardcore in the Northeast, although those are way different types of people. But as you go west and southwest and people were transplants, you don't see it as much. Like I've been to a Browns game in Phoenix. We outnumbered their fans because there aren't any.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit in Phoenix because they're all from someplace else.
Everyone always outnumbers them.
Yeah.
Well.
I mean, think about it. As much as I love sports, if I'm living in LA and surfing every day and enjoying life, like, I don't know, I'd probably still try to catch the Browns, but it wouldn't. The LA teams, I definitely wouldn't care about.
Yeah.
Something else that annoys me personally, wanted to see if you guys feel the same, is mega markets when people flip flop. Like the guy who, it doesn't happen very many places. It's really only New York, LA, and on a lesser extent, Chicago. But I'm a Yankees, Mets, Devils, Islanders, Rangers, Knicks, Nets, 76ers sometimes fan because I live within an hour and a half of all. That also drives me nuts.
Does that happen often?
People in New York being Mets fans when the Mets are good and Yankees fans when the Yankees are good.
I think that's rare, brother.
Maybe it is. I know a few,
knowing both Yankees and Mets fans, that's rare.
I can't fathom having Eric. Was it you and I talking about this the other day off show about, like, imagine if there was a second baseball team
in your city?
No, it was us. We were raising Canes.
Right. All three of us.
How tight-knit the land and Cleveland against the world, Ohio against the world is, to have two teams in Cleveland. I feel like would be so weird to be like, all right, we're all Browns and Cavs fans, but we got the Spiders and the Guardians playing this weekend. What side of the stadium are you sitting on? Would be. But
you got to remember that, they're very two different parts of the city and two different demographics. Like when it comes to Mets and Yankees fans, I'm generalizing a lot, I understand, but typically, you like a certain baseball team, you like a certain football team. You grew up on Staten Island, you're definitely et cetera. So it does break apart. I mean, the city's just so massive. Now, if you took Cleveland and you had a massive city that extended all the way down to Akron, like our whole DMA, and then you had multiple teams, it'd probably be different. I mean, we've met those people from Akron that are big rah-rah Akron people. That's a little weird to us Clevelanders. And I think the same thing would happen in sports.
Yeah, you're right. If Akron Canton was as big a metropolis as Cleveland and they put a pro anything franchise down there, that'd be super interesting.
Yeah.
It'd also be interesting if it was like, the Browns are in the AFC North, but the Akron such and such's Bulldogs are in the NFC East. The rivalry isn't necessarily there, but what if they put the Akron team like in our division?
Crazy.
That would be weird.
Do you guys, this is another question I kind of thought of just as we're talking about this whole thing. Do you guys adopt some of those like smaller cities? Like, I feel like, to me, like, I love Akron and I like some of the Akron sports culture, maybe because I worked for the Rubber Ducks and I got to see some of those diehard, whether they're 80 or the college kids coming through with their $2 college tickets or whatever. I definitely, like, I don't want to say I claim Akron or something like that because I'm not from there, but I definitely adopt them as like one of my sports towns. Like, if the Zips do good, I'm ecstatic. If the Ducks are doing good, regardless of my tie. Same thing with like Lake County, Columbus on a lesser extent, because that's, I feel like 1A, 1B for a lot of us up here in Cleveland, just with Ohio State and the Clippers and what have you.
I do.
You guys do that?
I do think that we think of them that way and they don't think of us that way. I think Akron has an inferiority complex. LeBron James talking about, we weren't even from there a few times, shows that they don't hate us, but like, we're like, oh yeah, little bro, man, I love you. And they're like waiting for us to fall asleep on the couch so they can slap us in the face and pour a cup of water on our head and run off up the steps and tell mom
100%.
like there's still love there, but they also are a little bit, some people I run into are a little bit like, this isn't Cleveland, this is Akron. But I don't know. Yeah, but no, to your point, yeah, I adopt teams. If the Columbus Blue Jackets can make the playoffs, let alone make the Stanley Cup, I'd be more into that than any other team. There's weird proximity when you don't have a team in your town that I do stuff with, but yeah.
Yeah,
I'm a North Carolina Tar Heels college basketball fan just because I hated Duke so badly in the 90s that I rooted for whoever hated them as much as me, and now I got a North Carolina jersey. It's the only non-Cleveland thing I have in my whole
Which is funny because I'm a UConn fan because I hated everybody rooting for either North Carolina or Duke, and I wanted a different team from those.
I knew that. We talked about that, I think. early on, I'm sorry, real quick. I think we talked about that early on because me and John both take the North Carolina side of that rivalry, and you were both you were like, screw both of you. I'm UConn because I hate when people do that, especially if you're not from there. Which
about the three-peat, baby.
Right. Okay.
About to win the men's and women's this year.
Women's certainly. Men's is.
I don't know about certainly, but
I watched Duke in Kentucky last night. Nobody's lying down for UConn.
that was an interesting game. I mean, UConn's doing their thing. Don't get me wrong. I will say that on the women's side, it comes down to I don't think South Carolina will be as good, but USC and what's her name was incredible last year. Paige and UConn got past them, but she was a true freshman.
Yeah, I was going to say she was like 18 and literally a freshman.
Juju Watkins, she's so good. It's just exciting that the women's game has grown. I am interested to see, I know we're a little off track, but I am interested to see what NCAA women's ratings looks like this year with obviously Caitlin Clark going pro and whether or not there's still an effect on the ratings or if that'll die off a little bit.
It'll die off a little, but it won't die off to what it was pre-Caitlin Clark, I don't think.
I definitely feel like I'll still tune in like I was, especially at the beginning of the season, only because like it's at that lull point where it's mainly just baseball's going on. So it's another sport to pick up and kind of watch. And even if it's just having it on the background while I'm playing video games and I have it on the other monitor or whatever, kind of like what I did this year. So I agree with you though.
I will say, and we talk about the Browns Stadium a lot. I am excited for them to build this new stadium because what they did with the women's and Turney Town and, Noah and I checked it out together. It was so much fun, that atmosphere in the city. We were just talking the other day how sometimes, DC is kind of a good example. And maybe you guys don't feel the same way, but like when I'm in DC, you could just feel like the power running through the city. Yeah. And Cleveland had that just not power, but the vibe that runs through that energy that you could just feel and it's palpable. And I love that.
Now, see, those reasons that you just cited are the reasons. That's why I don't want the stadium in Brook Park. People are like, are you mad about the Brook Park Browns? I'm like, no, they play there 8 or 9 times a year. We'll still go. It's the same drive, whatever. It's a nicer stadium. It's inside. We won't freeze our butts off. Awesome. Cool. Build it where you want. The women's Final Four being in Brook Park sucks.
You don't think they're going to stay in hotels downtown and be on 4th Street and doing the same stuff?
Not the same, though, when it's leaking out of Romo Fijo or coming right up, East 9th.
Romo Fijo.
I love that way of saying it. Alan Cox is a radio guy that says it that way, and I wish we would adopt that.
Everybody just goes with The Rock, which is fair. No, I don't think they'll go that way either, John. I think they'll go with the new hotels that they're building on this development and whatever renovation they'll probably do to the IX Center and play everything, and everything will be there in Brook Park, which sucks for down here where, me and Erik are currently residing, but no, I don't think it'll be downtown as much. Maybe there's some agreement where they tried to mix that kind of thing in so it isn't a complete loss for the city, but
see, I think I'm less concerned about it too because I don't plan to be in the city by the time this Brown Stadium's built. I don't plan to be in the city too much longer than I am. I've been here for like 8 years. So I guess I'm less concerned. Brook Park downtown doesn't really matter because I won't be walking to it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, even by the time we move there, say it's 28, projected 29 or whatever, you never know where I'm going to be at in life at that point too. I'm going to be 28, 29 and, in the suburbs at that point with Lord knows what's going on.
Noah with 2 little kids. All right.
No.
I want to move us on to final thoughts and takes. John, let's start with you. Give us your best.
Oh, I didn't prepare a final take this week. I completely forgot about it. Look at me not doing my homework. I think that's the first time ever.
You know what's funny about that? My final thought was going to be, I didn't prepare a final thought either because this was my flu game and I'm just trying to be alive during it. So I also don't have one. So how about we go to Mr. Noah Olson with your final thought and take?
Yeah, so the funny thing, no, I'm just kidding. I was going to harp on the Cavs a little bit more. People want to talk about this team maybe not being a threat, or maybe they're just on a streak right now and they're not going to be, this good come playoff time. The things you see out of this team, to me, scream competitive, finals making, chance to make the push. I'm not touting they're going to win the finals as a final take or something like that. All I'm saying is this team is damn good. They find ways to win even when they look sloppy in a first half like we saw tonight against the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's going to be a hell of a ride and a fun season to watch the Cleveland Cavaliers play basketball. And I, for one, am here as it not only as an employee, but of course as a fan of the team as well.
I want to piggyback real quick on that because after LeBron and after Mitch, Kenny Atkinson might be the best thing to happen to the Cleveland Cavaliers organization. This guy is so good as a coach. I mean, I agree with you. I think the ceiling is finals, and I know that sounds crazy. And, our 16th game, which would, if we win it, would put us firmly in second place all-time wins, is against the Celtics. That's going to be a test, and I'm excited to see it, especially after how they opened against New York this year. But I think we have the personnel to really make it happen, I got to say.
Yeah, I agree. My only concern is it's way too early in the season to be like, don't use it all in the regular season and get burnt out. It's, the 13th game. But I have seen this team with this GM and Donovan Mitchell is the best team, look like the best team in the Eastern Conference before the playoffs, and then get to the playoffs and not be the best team in the Eastern Conference before.
Yeah, it's like the Oakland A's years ago that went on that, 21, 22 game win streak, and then they bowed out in the first round of the playoffs. That would be awful for the Cavs.
I'm not.
But I'll counter.
They're amazing. I'm all in. I think they got the talent. I'm not saying I expect a collapse. I'm just saying the Cavs have been this good-ish game 1 through 65 before, and the problem is game 66 through the end of the regular season of the playoffs.
But I'll counterpoint you for a second and kind of piggyback on Erik now. Kenny Atkinson has done such a good job about load managing this team that I'm not as concerned as I was in years past about burning out. Yeah, they're going to hit a rough patch. Every team does, especially when you have a long season, 82 games or like the MLB, whatever. But I'm not worried about it being as bad where we're seeing the injury bug, knock on wood, to the extent that we have in years past. And some of these other just burnt out, they looked burnt out in the first half, came out. Donovan Mitchell went from having 5 points to 23 points and icing the game for us. And that's the type of grit that I'm seeing out of this team. That being said, I will give a spicier take. Yes, I love the chemistry going on and everything right now, but please, 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 please trade for a backup center. I know we have Tristan Thompson, but I'd like some rebounding. I know we're doing the small ball thing when we get Mobley and Allen off the court, but we need a true backup center. That's kind of where I'm at in terms of the only depth piece we're missing. This bench is phenomenal. This starting lineup is phenomenal. Everyone's gelling together perfectly. I want a backup center that isn't Tristan Thompson because he isn't playing right now.
Which, looking at that, I don't know if you guys caught the Mavs Golden State game last night.
I didn't.
But I would love a guy like the Mavs center. That would be fantastic. I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah. It just feels good to be like, what we really need is a backup center, and not being like, what we really need is a new coach, a new GM, a new offense. And
we got to go trade for Brandon Ingram, right? Erik,
right.
You still want to do
Donovan
that?
Mitchell and Darius Garland play together in the backcourt. Yeah. Yeah, they can.
Yeah, they can. And well at that.
Yeah. Do you not like the Ingram move?
At this point, no. I don't want to.
The only person at the 3 that had more assists than Ingram last year was LeBron.
Really?
I mean, I'm not saying I don't think we need that piece, but I wouldn't mind having them.
And I know you're playing devil's advocate, but if you're going to go get Brandon Ingram, you're trading one of Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and I don't want to touch anything going on with this roster for the rest of the season now, except a backup center.
So what do you think it would take to get Lively? I know he's not really a backup, but what pieces do you think we'd have to give up? Or would the Mavs even deal him?
I don't know.
I get, while Noah's thinking and rubbing his brow, I get all kind of bad vibes. Basketball is the one sport more than anywhere. I think team chemistry matters in the NBA more than any pro sport.
I agree with that. I mean, look at KD's career.
Correct. And to bring anybody in, whether they're I definitely don't want somebody known as locker room cancer, but to just bring in anybody new, unless it's somebody who's so good that it's undeniable, who can plug right in, and who's good natured, right? Like, yes, I would put Steph Curry in this lineup because he's not a locker room issue and he's really good at shooting threes, and that would help the team. But like, I don't want Lively, not right now. They're undefeated. What are you improving on?
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm ready to go out and deal like a way too future first round pick and some seconds for just some guy that is a backup. I don't have a name off the top of my head. Just a backup center so we can get some reboards. Jesus, can you tell we've been going for an hour? Rebounds off of the bench for this team.
On that
when
note,
Mobley and Allen are out. Sorry.
On the reboard note, I do want to wrap things up. You guys out there watching have just witnessed the first ever flu game at the office. I'm going to go home and go to bed. I can't wait. Noah, John, any last comments before we wrap this thing up?
Go Cavs. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Appreciate the time, Eric. You did a great job with your flu game. Appreciate you, man.
I am alive. I made it. I'm going to jump on and do another show. We're doing the after. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's wrap this up. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.